Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Powell. I'm sorry I've missed a couple of days, so hopefully, if you've been listening for Mr. Popper's Penguins, you're ready to get the next couple of chapters. So, we're ready to start chapter 7 Captain Cook Builds a Nest. And this is Mr. Popper's Penguins by Richard and Florence Atwater. Very reluctantly, Janey and Bill had to leave Captain Cook and go to school. Mrs. Popper was busy in the kitchen, rather belatedly doing the breakfast dishes, while she dimly realized that the penguin was going in and out of the refrigerator pretty frequently. She didn't think anything about it at first. Meanwhile, Mr. Popper had abandoned his telephone and was now busy shaving and making himself neat in honor of being the owner of such a wonderful bird like Captain Cook. But the penguin, who was neglected for the moment, was by no means idle and still. With the unusual excitement of having to go to the market earlier than usual, Mrs. Popper had not yet gotten around to straightening the house. She was an excellent housekeeper, but still, with two children like Janey and Bill and a husband with such messy ways, there is no denying the fact that she had to pick up the place rather frequently. Captain Cook was now attending to the picking up. Into the corners of every room he prowled and poked and poked and poked, with a busy thoroughness. Into every closet he stared with his white circled eyes. Under and behind all the furniture he climbed with his crowded plump figure, and with little cries of curiosity, surprise, and pleasure. And each time he found what he seemed to be looking for, he picked it up in the black end of his red beak and carried it, waddling proudly on his feet, into the kitchen and into the refrigerator or icebox. At last, Mrs. Popper began to wonder what on earth this bird was up to. When she looked, she could only scream to Mr. Popper to come quickly and see what Captain Cook had done now. Mr. Popper himself was looking rather remarkable, as Mrs. Popper noticed later, joined her in astonishment looking at all the things in the refrigerator. Captain Cook came up to and helped them look. "Ork, ork," he said with triumph. Mrs. Popper laughed, and Mr. Popper gasped as they saw all of the things he had carried through the house and into the refrigerator. He had 2 spools of thread, 1 white chess piece, 6 parts of a jigsaw puzzle, a teaspoon, and a closed box of matches, 1 radish, 2 pennies, a nickel, a golf ball, 2 pencil stubs, 1 card from a deck of cards, and a small ashtray. But there was more. 5 hair barrettes, an olive, 2 dominoes, and a sock, a nail file, 4 buttons of different sizes, 7 marbles, a piece of a telephone, and a tiny doll chair, and 5 pieces of checkers, a little bit of a graham cracker, a parcheesi piece, and an eraser, a door key, a button hook, a crumpled piece of tinfoil, half of an old lemon, a head of a china doll, 1 of Mr. Popper's pipes, a cap from ginger ale, 2 screws, and a belt buckle. But there was still more. He had 6 beads from a little necklace, 5 blocks, an egg, a bone, a toy harmonica, a piece of a lollipop, 2 toothpaste lids, and a small red notebook. All things he had found on the floor, under furniture, or all over the house. "Well, I guess is what he was doing," said Mr. Popper. "He couldn't find any stones to build his nest, so I guess he's using what he could find around the house." "Well," said Mrs. Popper, "those penguins may have heathen ways up at the South Pole, but I do think this one is going to be quite a help around the house." "Ork, ork," said Captain Cook, strutting into the living room, but this time he knocked over a lamp. "I think, Papa, that we had better take Captain Cook outside for a little exercise." "You are very dressed up today. You look almost like the penguin yourself," said Mrs. Popper. Mr. Popper had smoothed down his hair and shaved off his whiskers. Never again would Mrs. Popper have to tell him he looked wild like a lion. He put on a white shirt and a white tie, white pants, tan shoes, and a black jacket. He did indeed look like the penguin. He turned and walked like one now for Mrs. Popper, but he did not forget to take care of Captain Cook. "Can I have a few yards of clothesline, please, Mama?" asked Mr. Popper. I wonder what they're going to do with that. We'll find out when we read Chapter 8 next time.